Cult of the Lamb. It's a cute little roguelite base builder released by Massive Monster back in mid-2022 about starting and running your own little death cult of cuddly critters. I first played through the game a few months ago on stream, over at twitch.tv/Felix_fighter, and had a lot of fun doing a casual playthrough on normal mode. But shortly after I finished the game, they released a massive post-game update. The Sins of the Flesh. I figured, hey, rather than just jumping into this new post-game update on my old save, why not try a new game on permadeath for funsies? Oh yeah, and while we're at it, let's just throw it on the hardest difficulty. I mean, it can't be that much harder than normal, right? Fuck. Well, let's get started on the biggest mistake I've ever made. At the start of the game, you're shat out into a field, handed 30 gold to build a shrine, and a single follower to, use. We were given this nice little guy named Putregre. Anyways, I quickly doused him in a layer of red paint, set him to work worshipping at my shrine. Because every good cult needs a little bit of devotion. While he got on his hands and knees, I set to work on more important matters. You see, I was playing the game on penitence mode, meaning I had to worry about my own hunger as well as the hunger of my followers. Additionally, for some reason, I hadn't been sent here on a full stomach. I gathered wood and stone to make a cooking pot so that I could make some berry mush to eat. Now, you may be wondering, why not just eat the berries? No, impossible, for such an act would be beneath one of my status. I cooked my meal and gorged myself on the sweet juices of the cooked berries, watching as my hunger filled a quarter of the way. You know, that meal would have been enough to feed a follower for a full day. And it was around this point that I realized just how much of a problem food was going to be, considering the black hole I was piloting around. In order to get a reliable source of food, though, I was gonna have to learn how to farm. This is where our follower from earlier comes in. You see, our shrine, in a sense, is our cult's tech tree. As devotion is poured into it from our followers, I gain divine inspirations, allowing me to unlock new buildings for the cult. With the piddly devotion I'd gained so far, I was only able to unlock the temple. An important part of the cult, mind you, though one that I was currently unable to build. In order to start on that construction, I needed gold. This is a part of the game that's never really made sense to me though, like, who's the gold for? I'm providing the raw materials and the labor. Sure, it could be to pay my cultists, but like, why would I do that? Maybe it's just like an offering to the gods or something, I don't know. Either way, I was gonna have to get me some gold, which meant it was finally time for a crusade! This is where the roguelite aspect of the game comes in. You see, your cult is surrounded by regions controlled by the old faith, a violent death cult that kills all that oppose it. The good thing about death cults, though, is they're usually full of money and unhappy people just looking for an excuse to leave. This means that during my crusades, I could stock up on both gold and followers, along with a plethora of other resources. For now, though, the only region available to me is the Dark Ones, and with the help of my follower, we blasted open the door and prepared for my assault. At the start of each crusade, you're given a random weapon and spell. For the sake of this challenge, I've decided to go ahead and rank each of the weapon types and their variances, a list that is objective fact and indisputable. For the sake of this crusade, I got the dagger. Good attack speed, good DPS, but its short range and weak stagger make it pretty dangerous to use. Low B. With that out of the way, it was at about this point in the game that I realized one of the biggest kneecaps put on me by the very hard difficulty. My health. Yep, that's right. 2 hits and I'm down. Now, this posed a bit of a problem for me, because I'm bad at video games. In fact, I'm particularly bad at roguelites. I have a knack for panicking when I'm hit, which oftentimes just leads to me taking more follow-up damage, which is bad. But hey, let's look on the bright side. The Dark Woods is kind of just the tutorial region for the whole game, so none of the enemies are that hard. Anyways, as I continued to the end of the floor, I found myself at a portal that led deeper into the woods. It was at this point that I got to choose what direction I went to my crusade. And food! Food. With that free tile out of the way, it was time that I cleared the final floor of the crusade. As I explored the floor and killed Old Faith cultists, I stumbled upon an old friend of mine, Klonek. Every time you find Claw Neck during your crusades, you get to pick a card. These cards range from being useless, such as a card that reveals your map or a card that makes your enemies drop fish of all things, to being absolutely overpowered, such as a card that gives you a whole extra heart, or one that causes enemies to just have a chance to drop a shield when they die. Luckily, I got a good card, and he bestowed upon me a full shield heart. As I reached the end of my crusade, it was time for me to face my first mini-boss, Amdusius. And he's a total pushover. No real way around it. I mean, just look at this fight. I know he's like the first boss of the game and everything, but this is just pathetic. That being said, you don't kill the mini-bosses. No, you convert them. You turn your enemy's followers against them as you crusade through their lands. Which is just awesome. After bleeding the temple's coffers dry, though, I returned to indoctrinate my new member. And by indoctrinate, I mean splash a fresh coat of red paint on him. With the money I stole, obtained during my crusade, I erected a massive temple by the entrance of my cult so that all may bask in its glory. The temple is used for a variety of really important things, but for now, we just need to focus on sermons. After all, what kind of cult leader would I be if I wasn't preaching on the daily? Sermons are really important because as you can see, hey look, it's tomorrow! And as you can see, sermons make me stronger. So yeah, sermons are important. Anyways, with my extra health, I was feeling pretty confident, so it was time for yet another crusade. This time, I got the hammer. It has the highest base damage and stagger of any weapon, but you have to stand completely still to swing it, and it swings slower than a paraplegic grandmother. Low C at best. During this run though, I came to a shocking realization. I don't know if this is part of playing on the highest difficulty, or if this is just part of the new update. Saving followers was like a wave defense thing or something. When I first played through the game, most of the time follower squares were just like a burnt out village with a sole survivor. Not me fighting for my fucking life. Aside from that little annoyance though, I didn't really run into any problems during my crusade. So it was finally time to face my second mini-boss. This fight really highlighted the weakness of the hammer's attack speed. Since this boss was constantly jumping around, I could rarely land more than one attack at a time, making it an absolute slog. Not hard, just very long. By the way, I forgot to mention this earlier, but I named the Cult of Pain, because I figured this run would leave me in absolute pain, which is why you see this every time I return. Anyways, with another crusade out of the way, it was time for me to do a little work on the cult. After all, with every new member, I added a new mouth to feed, meaning scavenging for food was going to stop working pretty soon. Luckily, my faithful followers had learned the basics of agriculture, and I was able to get to work on setting up a field. Fields are made with grass, but not our grass. Our grass is, sacred or something. Luckily, grass can also be acquired from crusades, so if you ever see me just attacking a bush, know that it's to prevent world hunger, and not because of some unjustified hatred for nature. Anyways, for the time, I was only able to afford 6 farm plots. Now this posed a problem, as each plot could only hold one plant. One plant could only yield 3 to 4 crops. With meals costing 6 crops apiece, our field was only able to output 3 meals every few days. For reference, this little bastard eats that on his own in 1. In order to survive, I was going to have to abuse the second and third functions of the temple to buy myself some time. First, I was able to declare a doctrine using a tablet which I gained from leveling followers and from on crusades. This doctrine gave me the power to declare a ritual fast, bringing me to the last function of the temple. Rituals. Rituals can be performed using the bones of our enemies to gain some sort of effect, such as this convenient one that locks my followers' hunger at max for 3 days. Now, this does cost me some faith, but that can quickly be remedied with a sermon and some blessings. During my sermon, though, I unlocked Bane weapons, or more aptly named poison weapons. Bane weapons have a chance to apply poison on hit, and poison is insanely strong. And I don't know why this is the first type of weapon you unlock, because this is a solid A tier. With the food crisis temporarily solved, I figured it was time to head back out on another crusade. I wonder what weapon I'll get this time. Oh. The axe is bad and stupid and dumb and I hate it. F tier. No arguments. Anyways, during this crusade, I ran into the first elite enemy. Elite enemies are just normal enemies, but like, bigger. Don't get me wrong, they're annoying. Sometimes they can have some pretty strong effects attached to them, but usually they kind of just feel like a tankier version of their normal counterpart. With this elite guy out of the way, and a pretty hype wood tile behind me, I made my way towards the boss room. Before I could get there though, my god decided to answer my prayers. That's right, baby, I ain't gotta use that X no more. And on top of that, he gave me the claws. They've got a nutty 3-hit combo with massive AoE, good damage, and a strong stagger. Solid A tier. With the best weapon I'd gotten so far in hand, it was time for me to take on the third mini-boss. And just like the other two, since the Darkwoods is mostly a tutorial area, he went down without much of a fight. I promise, these get a lot harder. Trust me, you will see plenty of pain before this challenge is over. Speaking of pain, I returned home to see that crows had ravaged my already meager field. You know, the one that was already not producing enough food. Even worse, to unlock a scarecrow, I needed to have a level 2 cult. By the way, the concept of cults being able to level up is baffling to me. Like, what level do you think Jonestown was? Sorry, getting sidetracked. I went ahead and leveled up the cult, but that meant I still needed to wait for the devotion for another inspiration. So I figured there was no time like the present to take another dive into the Darkwoods. And at the start of this crusade, I finally got it. That's right, baby. It's the motherfucking gun. Huge stagger, huge knockback, huge damage, decent attack speed. It's the whole shebang. This thing is S tier without a doubt. No, not just S tier, SSS tier. Boom, baby, we're taking it to the top. Best part about it is, I got it at the perfect time. You see, your fourth crusade in any land is a special one. Notice how I've been calling all those other guys mini-bosses? Well, the fourth major fight of every region is the big one, the region's bishop. With my gun in hand, I marched up to the frankly quite hideous creature that stood before me and pulled the trigger. Oh, I'd been looking forward to this. The first boss of the game, the big dog of the Darkwoods, the climax of the entire early game. The man who is finally gonna show you just how hard this game can be, and he's just a fucking pushover. Like, I get he's the first actual boss and all, but this still just feels like a tutorial fight. Hell, his only attack that poses any threat at all is a circular wave of thorns he fires out from himself. But even that only exists to show the player you can dodge roll through enemy attacks. I literally no-hit this man on my first attempt. That being said, this is the perfect opportunity to point out that you get bonus resources at the end of a fight if you no-hit the boss. I returned home triumphant, and in celebration, declared cannibalism legal, for no other reason than I thought it'd be funny. With the new devotion I'd gained from my victory in hand, I set to work carrying my cult into a new age, unlocking scarecrows to protect our crops, and tents so they wouldn't have to sleep out under the stars. It truly was an age of progress and advancement. I even unlocked vampiric weapons, granting me a small chance of healing on hit. The power of this augment is so reliant on the weapon's attack speed that it has to sit in B for sheer inconsistency. With all this progress made, I knew I had finally made it through the early game. I figured it was time to take the fight to the next region, Anura. I went out to the portals and prepared to gather my followers and bust down that door. Okay, so maybe we were a few followers short of unlocking the door. That's fine though. I can just go back into the Darkwoods and search for more. Sure, this Birdman says with their leader gone they've grown stronger, but like, come on, it's just the Darkwoods. It can't be that bad. Well, that was 2 hours wasted. Also, let's just not talk about attempt 2. Hey, would you look at that? Run 3, we're black and white, we're in despair, and we just killed Leshy again. And this time, it only took me what? Just over an hour? So we're even making better time. That being said, I still didn't have enough followers to open the gate this run. But I did get the claws for my return to the Darkwoods. Sure, I took a couple of early hits because of this stupid water mechanic that is bullshit. But that doesn't matter because my buddy Cloudnex got me covered. And look at that. I even found some health in the chest. This run just has to succeed at this point. To be fair, things did look a bit dicey again as I fought for a new follower. But then, I found it. The vampiric blunderbuss. With that bad boy, I was ready to take on the damn world. In fact, I was so confident in my weapon that I walked straight into that boss room. You see, after every bishop fight, if you return to their land and finish a crusade, you'll have to fight an optional 5th boss, a witness. Now, you'd think this fight would be harder than the bishop, since it's like an optional 5th fight, and that makes sense. But yeah, no. It's just a wave defense. I mean, the witness himself only has 1 attack, and it's this really wimpy charge thing. But hey, I won't complain about a free follower. And just like that, I finally had enough followers to leave behind the early game and to move on to the first truly dangerous region. My followers gathered around me. I called out to my god, tearing down the door to Anura, bringing to a close the easiest part of this challenge. Little did I know, all that laid before me was pain, suffering, and rage in the mid-game. The mid-game began with a fast. That's right, food is still a problem. To give a bit of a spoiler, it never really stops being a problem. Turns out when you increase hunger gain by 50%, it's a bit impossible to outpace. That being said, in the sermon following the ritual, I unlocked my first new weapon type of the mid-game, necromantic weapons. These weapons have a chance to summon a ghost when slaying an enemy. These ghosts will then seek out nearby enemies and fly at them, dealing damage and staggering on hit. I'll be honest, they're pretty bad. The damage is low, the spawns are inconsistent, and the stagger is negligible at best. C tier. As I left the temple, I realized we had a bit of a crisis going on. A ritual fast could satiate my followers, but this boy needs to eat. Even worse, I had literally no food. Ignoring these, they don't really give hunger. To be honest, I only really had one solution in mind. Pillaging. You see, back when I was crusading through the deep woods, there was a multitude of times I found food in enemy lands, meaning if I got lucky, I could steal some food from Anura. I'd even kill 2 birds with 1 stone, since I could go ahead and knock off that first mini-boss while I was there. It was a flawless plan. I walked through the door to Anura, grabbed my necromantic dagger, and set to work tearing through the frogs that were there. How in the hell do you train a frog to fight? Ow, ow, shit, ow! These frogs got hands! They ate through the extra heart I found in half my health in no time. I would give you the cope take that I wrote in my notes and say it's because the dagger has bad range and stagger, but like, watching back over, I really was just getting bent over for being greedy. Either way, I didn't want to risk the run, and seeing that there were no food tiles, I decided it was best to just cut my losses and risk the possibility of starvation over near certain death in combat. Now, this was the first time I had ever recalled in this game, including during my standard playthrough. So imagine how shocked I was when I saw the only punishment was a pretty forgiving penalty on the resources I'd gathered. No faith loss, no loyalty drops, and no dissenters. A fact that I would come to abuse in the future. To further drive home the fact that cowardice is never punished, in the time I'd been gone, pretty much the entire field had grown, meaning I had plenty of food to sate my appetite. With my stomach full, it was time I focused on preventing the inevitable starvation of my people, as the ticking clock of their ritual fast came ever closer to completion. I started by planting more seeds, and then performing a ritualistic offering, sending what remained of our stores down into the depths, so that he who waits below would bless our fields with an instant harvest. The stockpiling of 2 separate harvests was good, but still I feared it would not be enough. No, I needed to reduce the strain on our food directly. Lucky for me, though, one of our followers had recently become quite elderly, and this greedy old man was growing fat off our meals, providing no work for his fellow followers. It was finally time for a sacrifice. After all, what use is caring for someone if you have nothing to gain for it? Especially since I stood to gain a lot from sacrificing them. I mean, I was basically just trading his life for a level, and who could blame me? I mean, I've traded more for less. What was I talking about again? Oh, yeah, hunger. For now, I'd curbed my starvation problem, so it was finally time to actually start pushing into Anura. This time, I got a little better luck with my weapon and managed to find some claws. Made clearing the first floor a bit of a breeze. Turns out, when you have enough stagger to actually cancel enemy attacks, it's a lot easier to kill them. And even better, found a food tile, even further leaving my hunger problems in the past. Nothing else of importance really happened, until I found this convenient set of vampiric claws outside of the boss room. It was time for my first boss fight of the new region. This was it. The fight to show me the tutorial's over. The gloves are finally off. The time for fun and games is finally over. It's just another frog. Oh shit, he's got a gun! Yeah, I don't know what I was expecting walking into this arena, but a shotgun frog was not it. That being said, if you take the fight slow, it's pretty easy. He doesn't jump around all too fast, and his blasts are pretty slow, and his ads are, well, they're just frogs. That being said, he does cover the screen enough to punish you for playing too loose, a fact that almost came back to bite me after I saw I hadn't taken any hits and started to play aggressively. But, despite the little hiccup at the end, I was able to convert the boss with relative ease. With the first mini-boss slain, it was time to return home, and finally, with the devotion I'd gained while gone, I was able to enter the age of refineries. Refineries are needed to make refined resources. Duh. Now, these resources are needed to build pretty much every building in this tier and higher, so I started out by building 3 refineries, which in my notes I said was overkill, but knowing just how expensive some of the later buildings are in retrospect, let's just say I was prepping for the future. The next morning, one of my cultists came to me with a wacky new request. He's like, hey, you know that guy who's been a loyal member of the cult for like ever? Let's send him to jail as a prank. Trust me, it'll be so cool and funny. Now, my morals said not to, but this guy had gotten everyone in town in on it, and they were threatening to dock me 25 social credit, faith points, if I rejected the plan. With a heavy heart, I sentenced the innocent man to a day in the stockades. Feeling a bit guilty, not really wanting to stick around to see him suffer, I decided it was best if I just went back into Anura to take on the Second Crusade. And I immediately got my ass handed to me again. I nearly died. Twice. Even worse, when I returned from the Crusade, I found that our funny little prankster had a new prank in mind. No. I draw the line at murder. We are not killing someone for the funny. My lack of needless bloodlust, though, turns out to be a bit of a turnoff for my savage followers. And my refusal to murder someone causes a bit of a crisis of faith. It's nothing a little brown-nosing can't fix, but like, why was this an issue in the first place? Hell, even the guy I refused to kill was mad at me for the refusal. Whatever, it's not my fault he's crazy. Anyways, with that mini crisis averted, it was time to head back into Anura for another shot at the Second Crusade. Bad news is, I got one of the worst weapon combos in the game, the Vampiric Hammer. Good news is, Clawneck gave me a card to increase my attack speed by 50%, making the hammer feel not like shit to use. All that being said, I noticed something odd in Clawneck's tent. A pedestal with some cards on it, and a prompt to spend 50 gold. That's right, Clawneck's selling cards now. Once per crusade, you can give him some money for an additional draw of the cards. At first I didn't use it much since gold was tight, but trust me, this became a crucial part of later crusades. I mean like run saving at times. My crusade went relatively well as I passed through the rest of the floors and oh, is that a shield? Yeah, so apparently enemies could start carrying around shields at a certain point. Now, you'd think this would just make them a little bit tankier, but no, you'd be wrong. It actually makes them damn near invulnerable. But there is a trick to killing them. You see, earlier, when I sacrificed that old man, I actually unlocked heavy attacks, which are attacks that have a slight windup and take some fervor to use. Each weapon has their own special one, and they instantly knock shields off of enemies. Now, I'm sure they have more use cases than just that, but like, this is the only thing I use them for, so... Anyways, mini-boss time. Was I being a little cocky walking on half health? Maybe. But I picked up the dagger earlier, and with the attack speed card from Clawneck, it was more than a little nuts, so I wasn't that worried. Plus, look at how easy his patterns are. I mean, flies? Really? I'll just take them out with my Ichor Bomb and, oh. Okay, flies are immune to Ichor. I mean, luckily I was able to take them out normally, so it wasn't that big a deal. This little charge thing is so slow that I could never get hit by... Okay. I mean, that was just bad positioning on my end. A minor mistake. That won't be... Ah! See? Easy fight. And look at that, I even got some food for the effort. No problems. Yep, none at all. With another crusade out of the way, another crack in the seal, it was time for me to find a bit more permanent solution to the whole food thing. You see, earlier I'd met this little bug guy that sells seeds. Problem is, I'm broke. But don't worry, Mayor Lewis has got our back, and he's been doing overtime coming all this way out here to our cult to sell items from this chest here. Now, seeds alone won't save us though. This field is still far too small to produce enough food for us all. But we've got a solution for that. Introducing the greatest new product on the shelf. Literal shit. You got followers, they eat food. And what's that food do, I ask? It digests into nutrient-rich chocolate stink bars, perfect for nearly doubling your field's output. So act fast and buy now before we're all out of stock. Oh, yeah, and by the way, while tending to the field, I almost died of starvation because I wasn't paying attention, so yeah. Anyways, it was time for the Third Crusade. Now, I'm not gonna lie to you. I lost it pretty early on, and I don't have a great way to transition into this. So, I'm just gonna say it. Between this recall and the next attempt at this run, I sacrificed an old man and unlocked Zealot weapons. Zealot weapons. They allow you to turn the fervor you gain on crusades into devotion for back home. Does this have any combat benefits? No! Does that matter? And permadeath? Hell yeah! D tier. And now that we've left the classroom, it's time to turn around and walk right back in because we've finally got the last weapon in the game, the sword. The sword is the literal middle. Mid-range, mid-attack speed, mid-damage, mid-stagger. But because it's mid in all stats, it doesn't really have a weakness, so it's a solid B. Having a zealot sword, I unlocked a new divine inspiration on the first floor. And well, that's really all that happened there. Then I got an easy stone tile, and after a while of running through a frankly boring run, Twitch chat decided to spice things up a bit. And using Cult of the Lamb's inbuilt Twitch integration function, they handed me a shiny new vampiric dagger. Isn't that great, being able to influence the run? Over at twitch.tv/Felix_fighter. Sorry, that was kind of something I had to do. Anyways, the crusade started to go a bit downhill, and I was eventually knocked all the way down to 1 heart. But then my buddy Clawneck came in clutch with a whole extra heart. On top of that, I even found a shield heart in a random chest. It was as if the gods themselves were rooting on this run. Sure, by the time I got to the boss room, I'd already lost that shield heart. But I'd healed the actual heart back with the dagger, so like, was anything really lost? Anyways, it was time for Zappa, the third mini-boss of Anura. And for the sake of time, I'm not even gonna go into theatrics on this. This guy hella indicates his attacks and moves so slow. It's not even close to a hard fight. He's just mini-boss of the region. With the last piece of the seal prior to the actual boss fight broken, it was time to head back home. To another hunger crisis. Don't worry though, finally had enough food stored up for it to not actually be a problem. And with food no longer being a constant problem, I actually had time to focus on other stuff for once, like building toilets, a commodity that I bet most of you didn't even realize the cult was missing. You gross bastards. I also started working towards getting enough devotion to unlock the cheaper rituals inspiration, to have the cost of rituals, which is insane. Problem is, that's really just a waiting game, meaning I had no reason to put off the final crusade in Anura. I took a deep breath and walked through the door to see another fucking vampiric hammer. What is this game's problem? I got knocked to half health in the first room, and you'd think that that would mean I'd recall and try for a different weapon. But no, I just had to go on. I mean, sure, I got a pretty lucky heal shortly after from the hammer. And sure, I found one of the best relics in the game. And sure, I didn't lose any health in the follower wave defense. But like, still, even I was doing it all with the hammer. After all, a million good things in a run can all be undone by one bad thing. like a room full of enemies that swing faster than your base attack speed on the hammer, or rolling into a corner that you can't roll out of, and dying on your permadeath save 4.5 hours in. Yeah. Oh, and attempt 4 ended while looking for followers after killing Leshy, by the way. Then attempt 5 started out good with my first ever no-hit full crusade, but died to the first frog because, I don't know, reasons. Finally, on attempt 6, after killing Leshy, beating the first witness, unlocking cult level 3, expanding the cult to a whole 13 people with 2 fully automated farms to feed them, I was finally back where I was before. I walked through the door and god damn it! Don't worry though, I actually made it to the boss this time. And on top of that, 2 rooms before the door, I found a set of necromantic gauntlets, and I had full HP plus 1.5 shield hearts. Hell, I was almost as tanky as I would have been at the start of a crusade on normal mode, and I had a good weapon to boot. I was finally ready to take on Hecate. Now, Hecate's one ugly-ass frog. Her arena's unique though, because instead of summoning ants herself that can be killed to thin out, her arena constantly summons frogs to sit at a max of 6 frogs. Additionally, she jumps around the arena, fires out bombs, and summons hordes of flies herself. As you can see, the fight started out pretty well, but then this happened. Let me show you that again, real slow. Now, let me explain what happened here. You see, whenever you're hit in this game, as with many other games, you get a few frames of invulnerability. I did not know this at the time, but apparently, in very hard mode, your number of iframes is cut in half, meaning that you run out of iframes before you're done being staggered from being hit. Meaning that if you're hit by, I don't know, a horde of flies, you'll eat multiple hits before you're even allowed to roll out. Let's just say this caused me to panic a bit, and I'm not the most rational when I'm panicking. So, shortly after, I rolled into more flies. Let's just say I didn't take it well. Am I not able to get hit, shields from the gift from below thing during this fight? What the fuck? What the fuck was that? That's fucking bullshit. Oh my god, what the fuck? Anyways, you know the drill. Leshy, Gusian, Aligo, Sapar, and we're back. Once again, I found myself in front of Hecate's door. Only this time, I had diseased hearts instead of shield hearts, vampiric gauntlets instead of necromantic ones, and a trinket that made me small, making my hitbox smaller, and I think my attack speed higher. I came at this fight with a vengeance. This was, in fact, the same stream that Hecate had killed me in just 3 hours earlier, and I was angry. I played careful and made sure not to let those damn flies near me. I actually took time to thin out the ads at times, and didn't greed for pointless combos. I made it all the way through the first stage without taking a single hit. Took a couple of dumb ones in phase 2 by getting too close, but still, I made it through with near razor precision. And then it all fell apart. You see, at the end of phase 2, she jumps off the map and summons 2 Zapars. Like, 2. What the hell? Caught me off guard and I got my face bashed in. I mean, these guys got me real low. But then I thought about something. You know how earlier I said the frogs are always spawning? Well, I just so happen to have some vampiric gauntlets, and this arena is much bigger than Zapar's was. So, since I'd already killed the first one, I could just kite to the opposite side of the arena as the second Zapar moved around, and beat up frogs until I was healed. With this little bit of cheese, I was able to enter Hecate's final phase of full HP, and with a little bit of playing safe, and just being better, I finally killed her. With that done, I was finally ready to end my 3rd day of streaming the run. Because of that, I went into the lead up for Anchor Deep, the 3rd region in the game, on a fresh mind. That being said, before going into this new region, I wanted to get some warm-up runs in since it was a new day. So I went and saved one of my followers' lost siblings in Deep Woods, and fought the second witness in Anur. By the way, the second witness is just as easy as the first. It works in the exact same way, only this one throws some bombs every now and then. With a couple of warm-up crusades under my belt, it was finally time for me to make my way into the literal water world of Anchor Deep. Don't ask how I can breathe underwater. Let's just say it's one of my many powers. I'm going to admit, though, I was a little worried about this part, since this was the first area to give me troubles in my normal playthrough. But it seems that luck was on my side, as for the first time ever, I found a room that literally just had tarot cards in the ground. Now, one of the reasons this area has caused me troubles in the past is because it's the first region to really use parryable projectiles. You see, a small number of enemies fire projectiles that can be parried back, damaging and stunning the attacker. This has been a pretty niche case not worth mentioning before Anchor Deep, but here, there's an enemy that relies on this mechanic. You see, this guy right here, he has impenetrable armor. Kicker is, he also fires a projectile that can penetrate his impenetrable armor. In order to kill him, you must engage in a deadly game of badminton until he misses, and then, after he's been knocked down, being a good sport, you beat his ass. That being said, getting this mechanic down did consume some HP on my end, so I had to recall. I did turn around immediately and go back in though, so it wasn't really that big a deal. On top of that, I got a merciless dagger. Now, you may be thinking, wait a minute, you haven't talked about unlocking merciless weapons. And to that I say, it happened during the warm-up stuff and I didn't really know how to work it in. Merciless weapons! These bad boys are guaranteed to crit every so many seconds. And guess what? Auto crits are pretty damn strong. Because of that, these will find their home just in front of Bane weapons in A tier. Shortly after entering the first zone, I ran into Clawneck, who gave me a whole disease tart. And, being the brave young eldritch being that I am, I bought an extra card to be safe. The first floor went by pretty easily this time, and I only really ended up taking one hit for my troubles. Not wanting to risk anything, I took the short path and made a quick stop by Kamek on my way to the boss room. Now, I don't really have a great way to say this, but this first mini-boss was the first thing to kill me in my normal playthrough. In fact, it killed me more than once, so I was more than a little worried going in. This is gonna sound really dumb, by the way, but that guy is a pinball, and this arena is his machine. When he's preparing to attack, an arrow will show on the ground where he's going to launch. The longer he holds his attack, the faster he'll fly out. All I could remember going into this fight was how bullshit I thought this attack was, and how impossible it was to dodge. As you can see though, that was just the copium take of my brain lagging past self. Turns out, if you force yourself to go as no hit as possible in a game that requires a degree of reaction speed, you'll get better at reacting quickly. That is to say, I made this man my bitch. Oh, and the new food for the region's cauliflowers, so yay. When I returned home, I realized I had enough devotion to unlock probably the biggest quality of life part of this whole tech tree. Farming Station Level 2. You see, my current farming station allowed my followers to plant crops with the seeds from the bins and water them, but when it came to harvesting, that was on me. Which, like, gross. Why am I indoctrinating people and not putting them in the fields? Anyways, making level 2 farming stations fixes this problem, as with the addition of this little chest, my followers could do even more of the hard work for me. Along with the farms, after a few sermons and, honorable discharges, I started to fly through my crusade tree, unlocking both Might of Devotion 4 and 5. I was starting to run into a problem though. You see, in very hard mode, your followers age twice as fast. So I was starting to gain a sizable population of elderly. The thing is, I ain't running a nursing home, and Lord knows I don't want to mess with bodies. Even worse, people were reaching old age faster than I could sacrifice them. Luckily, I was able to find another means of rewarding those who had dedicated their best years to the cult. Ascension. My most loyal few be chosen to ascend to the heavens above, to join in perfect harmony with our God. Ignore the minced meat raining down from the ceiling, that's normal. Let's just focus on how much more loyal you are, now that you know what rewards await you. With the first wave of elderly dealt with, it was time for another excursion into Anchor Deep, With a merciless dagger in hand, I delved into the watery abyss. I actually had a pretty good start to this run. I got a lightning relic early on, and Clawnet gave me a card to deal poison damage on hit. And I shouldn't have to say how strong that is. I even bought myself a whole extra heart, because I have no shame and will pay to win. At some point though, I found this merciless axe, and with another crusade successfully under my belt, it was time I took on the second mini-boss of Anchor Deep. I'm gonna be honest with you though, this fight kinda went to shit. I mean, you know it's a great sign when I walk directly into a projectile before I even hit the guy. Watching back through this fight, all but maybe one of the hits I took were completely my fault and pretty obvious mistakes. But trust me, in the moment I was all for blaming the hell out of the game. This fight became a real ass clincher at the end though. But a lucky crit from the merciless weapon ended the fight before things could go from tense to tragic. Speaking of tragedies, I returned home to a cult with 0 faith. Seriously, do these guys just not care that I'm regularly putting my life on the line to kill the people that used to rule them? Either way, it wasn't something that some good old-fashioned shrooms couldn't fix. Drugs. With faith at an all-time high, one of my followers got a bit bold and asked for my hand in marriage. Now, the responsible thing to do would be to wait until after the drugs wore off to make sure it was something they actually wanted. The thing is, I am a cult leader, and we aren't exactly known for being the most responsible people. Plus, who am I to say no to free loyalty? After my wedding, it was time to recruit a new generation into the cult, especially since the old one has been so thinned out. You'd think that following this mass indoctrination, it'd be time for my honeymoon. But alas, the Red Crown never sleeps, and it was time for me to once again delve into the depths of Anchor Deep. I walked in to see one of the strongest weapon combos I'd gotten to date, the Merciless Claws. Turns out when you take a weapon that has a lot of AoE to it and give it a crit, it does a healthy chunk of damage. During this crusade, I learned just how strong relics and spells that give the chilled effect are. I mean, just look at this poor man. He didn't even stand a chance. That being said, I did get knocked down to 1 heart shortly after this. That being said, right afterwards, Clawnet gave me a whole heart in the literal next room, so never punished. As I progressed through the floors, I came across a bit of a moral quandary. You see, generally, I'm against human trafficking. But how could I pass up 70% off? Like, be honest with yourself. If you were in my shoes, you wouldn't have passed up the offer. Look, I'm giving him a better home, okay? Sorry. Anyways, I found a gun. And with said gun in hand, I decided it was time to take on the final mini-boss. Now, this guy's a bit unique in the sense that instead of summoning ads, he's kinda just a bullet hell. I mean, he could have been hard if he summoned ads and forced me into weird positions around the bullet hell, but like, there were no ads, so I kinda just dodged. Also, look at how strong the chill is. My man's is out here fighting Morgana levels of CC. So yeah, gun plus no ads plus chill equals no hit. Which was great, because it meant I got to multiply the cauliflower I got for beating him. I came home to pure, unfiltered euphoria as I collected from my auto harvest for the first time. Even better, the drugs hadn't worn off yet, so everyone was actually happy to see me return. Since my followers were being nice to me, I decided to reward them by learning how to build the highest tier of houses. Now, they were expensive enough that I couldn't make many of them, but it's the thought that counts. During my next sermon, I finally unlocked it, the last of the weapon variants. Godly weapons! These weapons have ascended beyond the capabilities of normal weapons, dealing increased base damage. Jokes aside, it's like double base damage. Like, congrats. Every hit now hits harder than a crit. S tier. With the godly weapons at my side, devotion was at an all-time high, and our cult ascended to level 4, the highest of levels, in a matter of days. We were no longer a scad community in the middle of nowhere. We were now a true, holy force to be reckoned with. It was finally time. Time to march into Deepwoods and to cut its leader's head off. After all, Calamar was all that stood between me and the late game. Sadly, I wasn't able to find a godly weapon as I stepped to the door, but the merciless dagger I found would more than suffice. It's not really important to the run or anything, but I found the first room in this crusade to be pretty neat. I had to kill these guys in order based on the numbers on their heads, and there were these cart traps that were arena hazards that could hit both me and them. It was a cool switch up from the normal floor fights, so I thought I'd mention it. Anyways, as I continued through the first floor, I got a diseased heart, and bought a card that gave me crit chance, on top of my crit chance. As I progressed through the floor to the map, I realized something. I can only reliably get tarot cards from combat floors, and I was consistently getting through full floors no hit. Meaning, if I wanted to get the best shot at being uber strong for the boss, I was gonna have to go the mega combat route. It actually did pay off though, as I found a card to increase damage and an extra heart. With these cards in pocket, a merciless dagger in hand, and an ice spell on deck, it was finally time I faced the Bishop of Anchordeep, Calamar. Immediately, I could tell he was a step up from Hecate, as he summoned 3 guys and sent out a tight cluster of bullets to instantly fill the arena. Keeping my head cool, I waited for the bullets to spread, and dodged behind him. But then he swung with his sword, and I responded with mine. Turns out he's immune to chill from my frost sword. And his sword is bullshit! I mean, come on, how was I supposed to dodge that? The moment he swings, it's too late to dodge, but dodging preemptively just causes him not to swing and keep chasing. No, calm down. Just focus. What in the hot fried Kentucky fuck is that bullet pattern? No. Breathe. Calm down. You can do this. You still have 3 hits worth of health left. Just play safe and you'll be fine. Oh, for the love of God, stop summoning ads. Oh, come on, where was I supposed to go there? Oh. You know, the funny thing is, I didn't even get mad at the time. Just listen. That was 8 hours. Fuck. I'd unlocked all weapon. Yeah. Pure, unfiltered depression. Also, attempt 8 was similarly tragic. 7 hours in, I was ready to fight Calamar again, and I was forced to face an ugly truth. The truth is, the gun's not as strong as I made it out to be. Unless you're in melee with it, its damage output is just far too low. And in a boss fight like this, low damage means a long fight, and a long fight means more room for mistakes. It's with a heavy heart that I must dethrone the gun from its triple S tier rank and drop it all the way down to an A. But with attempt 9 came redemption. And by redemption, I of course mean abusing the shit out of good luck. I mean, I rolled a godly axe at the start of the crusade, which does some crunchy damage. And during my normal crusade, I found almost every defensive option I could. I mean, just look at this health bar. So yeah, did I enter this fight honorably for a fair duel? No. Did I care? Well, nearly 35 hours worth of time on this challenge was really making me want to say no. Would it have been nice to be able to tell you some triumphant tale of overcoming the first major obstacle I had come across with pure skill and improvement to overcome the odds? Sure. But the truth is, I two-shot his ads, I did this much damage a hit, and I threw caution to the wind, taking easy-to-dodge hits just to melt his ass. And guess what? It felt great. I mean, just listen to the pure euphoria I took in taking him down. That's a new PB right there. That is a new fucking top. Oh, and it's smooth sailing from here. It only took me, what, 8 hours and a loss today to get to a new PB? Let's fucking, I don't fucking care. I got it. I got the, Let's fucking go. All that being said, there is one last thing I need to throw in about this fight. I was too harsh to the axe in my previous video. The F tier was a purely spiteful take made by an ignorant fool. It's high time I moved him to his rightful place. In C tier. Yeah, I mean, it was a bad call to put it in F, but it still ain't amazing or anything. Anyways, with Calamar dead and the stream nearing an end, I decided to give a proper send-off to the mid-game with one last sermon. I called upon my followers to gather around and lifted my head to speak. Wait, what's this? What's happening? This is sin. Dirty, vile sin. It festers in the soul and eats away at the inside. It can turn a man into a shell of his former self, unrecognizable to the world that knew him before. It corrupts. And it's the perfect resource for all the wacky new stuff in Cult of the Lamb's newest update. Which is why it was time for me to foster sin amongst my followers. With nude dancing? YouTube's cool with this, right? Sure. Now, you may be wondering what exactly I can do with this sin. Interior decorating! Yeah, I don't know either, but it looks nice. Anyways, after declaring a period of nude celebration, I figured it was time to go all in on the flesh part of the Sins of the Flesh update by unlocking the mating tent, which I wouldn't actually make till much later, so you got that to look forward to. That being said, I had ended last stream after killing Calamar to end the mid-game, so I figured it'd be a good idea to do a warm-up crusade to get into the groove of things before actually entering the last region. Which means, you know what time it is. Time for a witness fight! In this corner we have the third witness, a flying ball of hate that fires bullets around the arena and summons goons to fight his battle for him. And in this corner we have the Lamb, with a vampiric hammer in hand and an ice sword spell on deck. This boy uses brute strength and a lucky attack speed increase to melt through his foes. I'd ask for you to put your bets in, but as you can see, the Lamb's already got him on the ropes, and oh, that's a knockout, folks. You saw it here first. This witness is no harder than the rest. Oh, and I got a bit of a lifetime supply of cabbages for my troubles, so it was worth it. I returned home to find that I had finally begun my ascension to godhood. You see, previously, I'd had to fight tooth and nail for every last drop of power, but now, between the loyalty gains of ascension, the power generation of sacrifices, and the burgeoning growth of my flock, I was flying through my crusade tree. In a single trip to the temple, I was able to unlock 2 whole crusade techs, a feat that would have taken upwards of an endgame a week in the past. With power growing as quickly as it was, and such a successful warm-up crusade under my belt, I figured there was no point in putting things off. It was finally time to officially step into the late game. It was time to enter the Silken Cradle. My first crusade into the spider-infested lands of the Silk Cradle started with the claws, baby. These were the perfect weapon for clearing out these, quite frankly, massive eggs before they could hatch. And even if they did, the younglings would crumble under my might. Or, they would if they would stand still. Come on! It appears you fucked up. Initially on this crusade, I found a new spell capable of possessing enemies hit by it, forcing them to turn upon their friends and tear them apart, provided their AI felt like it. Don't get me wrong, it's good because it meant they weren't attacking me, but more times than not, they kind of just stood there once possessed. Because of this inconsistency, I went ahead and took the chance to swap it out with this necromantic magic. With this new spell, I could summon an army of ghosts to strike out at my enemies. Now, in my first video on the early game, I mentioned that necromantic weapons were bad because the ghosts they summon are kinda mid. And that's still true, when you're only summoning 1. Now let's say you summon, 5 of them. That weak stagger and damage that held them back before adds up into one pretty damn meaty hit. And with that, it was time to make my way into the first boss room. Oh, also, I found some godly claws before I went in, so yeah. Speaking of godly claws, they were a great way to trivialize this fight. I mean, it probably could have been hard. This guy did jump around pretty fast, summon some goons here and there, and even fire bullets when he landed, but yeah, kinda hard for him to compete. After I squished that spider, it was finally time to see the new food of the region. Beetroots? Now that I think about it, This is the first game I've played that uses beetroots other than Minecraft. Well, I ain't one to complain about free food, so when I returned home, I made sure to toss them into the seed stations at the farm to let my followers plant them. And with another kill under my belt, and my farm stocked, it was time for yet another sermon. And with another sermon came another upgrade. At long last, I was finally able to unlock new relics. Now that I think about it, I've never actually formally introduced relics, despite showing them in prior videos. Relics! Relics are powerful active items that can be found during crusades. Each have their own special abilities, and many of them recharge over time as you battle. They range from being actively detrimental to a run, to being game-breakingly overpowered. This branch of my tree unlocked more powerful angelic and demonic variants of existing relics. Honestly, pretty pog. As I walked out of my temple, one of my older followers came up to me with a request. These damn kids don't know how good they got it. Whip them into shape and show them how hard a truly faithful man works. Translation: perform a ritual declaring unending work for 3 days. Just goes to show that even in a death cult, old people can't seem to handle seeing people happy. Not really wanting to listen to the complaints of my soon-to-be sleep-deprived followers, I decided it was time to take my second trip into the Silk Cradle. I walked in to see Zealous Gauntlets again. Are these gonna be the late game's vampiric hammer? They ain't bad, so I'm not complaining. Plus, they were perfect for clearing the spawning pit from hell. That being said, I did get knocked down to half pretty early on. That being said, I bought a shield heart from Clawneck, so the run stayed alive. Following that little hiccup, I got one of my first legitimately free followers of the run. No wave defense, no convincing them to join, no buying them, just legitimately free. Even better, the next room I got my first angelic artifact of the run. And, calling it strong is a bit of an understatement. I soon found myself at the end of the Second Crusade, standing before the boss room. I have to admit, despite being the last region in the game, the Silk Cradle is the area I remembered the least from my normal playthrough. So to say I was a little nervous walking blind into a boss fight that I didn't remember at all would be a bit of an understatement. That being said, there was no way to go but forwards, so I held my head high and walked through the door to see a caterpillar. By the way, did I mention the lightning relic was strong? You know, in this difficulty, enemies have 50% more health. If this was normal mode, this guy would have been almost one-tapped. Starting to think I might be a bit over-leveled. Jokes aside though, after my initial burst, the guy summoned 2 massive spiders and covered the arena in poison, making the fight a little less easy than I thought it would be. Or more, making me play carefuler than I thought I would have to. Feels a little disingenuous to call a fight that I know hit a hard fight. With another boss fight down, I returned home to find sin had infiltrated my flock. Look at this vile man, the hypocrisy of his belief in me, and his inability to save his own soul. This horrific worm fills me with nothing but joy and decorative inspiration. I mean, just look at that stained glass window. Absolutely beautiful. Gorgeous even. With another upgrade on my temple complete, it was finally time to collect the beetroots from earlier. And, with their harvest, I was finally able to make a buffet of 3-star hearty meals for my followers. No longer would they be scrounging by on berry gruel and pumpkin soup. And to celebrate our bolstered infrastructure, I sacrificed more of the old. Because, like, seriously, cycling these guys out is becoming a constant necessity. Almost as much of a necessity as continuing the Crusades! Haha, top tier transition. I was wrong. I didn't escape it. In case you haven't seen my other 2 videos on this run, which you should, the Vampiric Hammer is legitimately the worst weapon combo in the game, in my opinion. But with my increased skill and a Binding of Isaac reference on my side, I was able to make the most of it. Shortly after, though, I came across the Big Man. Seriously, dude, you almost don't even fit on the map. You're tanky as hell. But I'm better. And after another big man, I came across my first follower defense of the region, which is a bit odd considering this is the 3rd Crusade. Still, it's the same old, and at this point, these wave defenses are more of a formality than anything else, so I was able to get through it without taking a hit. As I quested through the last floor before the boss room, I stumbled upon an old friend of mine, Kudak, and he offered me a vampiric dagger, freeing me from the shackles of my hammer. And with my shackles off, it was high time I took on the last mini-boss of the Silk Cradle, a giant scorpion by the name of Haras. To be honest, I surprised myself with a pretty good dodge at the start of this, and with a relic capable of freezing time on my side, I was able to put a pretty damn good chunk of damage in early. Seeing how fast the man dashed around though, I made sure to keep my distance, using my missile spell to chip away at him, and dodging his barrages of bullets as they spread out around the map. Though he got a couple of good hits in himself, he was no match for my onslaught. With my relic recharging throughout the fight, I was able to put an end to our battle, with another time stop, wailing on him as he stood there, powerless against me. I returned home to a bit of a crisis. Not only was I on the verge of starvation, but so was my cult, leaving faith dangerously low. Though I was able to quickly mediate this with the stores of food I'd built up, I was starting to realize that no matter how much food I produced, there was always going to be hunger problems while I was gone, since my followers were incapable of cooking for themselves. The lazy bastards. It was high time I made a true kitchen. Capable of storing up to 30 meals worth of food, this kitchen would allow a follower to cook in my place while I was gone on my escapades. As I finished erecting the kitchen, though, one of my followers approached me with a request. He wanted to be my first disciple. Finally, after countless hours of toiling away through harsh battles and even harsher city planning, someone had finally noticed my divinity. Finally, they were ready to give themselves over to me fully. Finally, I was one step closer to becoming a god. Following his ascension to discipleship, he approached me again to tell me his idea for new buildings exclusive to my chosen few. Wait, does that say a buff for my crusades? Sign me the hell up! Shit, I gotta get that thing built right now so we can... Oh. That's fine. Just throw money at it. All the tithes, all the plundering gains, all of it! Yes, yes, yes! It was finally time to see the fruits of my labor, the power of my discipleship. Oh. Well, it seems we have a bit of waiting to do. And I guess there's no better time than the present to finally give in to the sins of the flesh. Oh, come on! It's fine. It's fine. I still have money left over. It's not too hard to afford. Well, now that my coffers are dry, it's time to start a family. It's up to me, the leader of our cult, to decide which of my followers will make for the best couple, combining their traits into the perfect child. After all, nothing says cult quite like a healthy dose of eugenics. With my couple chosen, it was time to channel within them the cells required for mating, and soon a beautiful golden egg was laid. Don't question the implications of it being an egg, let's just say it's some sort of platypus situation or something. After a few more days of waiting, and a couple of quick crusades for bones to restock my ever-depleting ritual supplies, my disciple shrine was still not full. But, in other more important news, I'd finally finished off the combat tree. At long last, after 11 hours into the run, I had done it. I had reached the maximum level of combat prowess. I had ascended to a paragon of pure violence. But with this ascension came a question. Where do I go from here? What's the use of sermons now? I pondered it that night as I laid down to rest. My heart dropped the next day when my sermon commenced and nothing happened. Just the normal small boost of faith and nothing more. But wait, what's that? That's right, baby! Sermons now give a full shield heart to your next crusade. Even better, it actually lets you store up to 2 sermons worth of hearts. Completing the tree had, in a sense, doubled my health. I now passively had the same HP as I would have had playing in normal mode. In celebration for this insurmountable achievement, I unlocked the next level of decoration for the temple, filling it with this beautiful bounty of nature. Seriously, I fucking love this aesthetic. Additionally, after a literal hour of waiting, my disciple filled his shrine, giving me a whole half shield heart. Look, I'm not complaining about free health, but like an hour for half a shield? Seriously? Still, with my health more than doubled and my combat tree complete, it was finally time for me to delve into the Silk Cradle to kill the last of the 4 bishops, Shamara. Life is a cruel mistress, though, and I was once again given the fucking vampiric hammer. There are 6 different weapons in this game. Each weapon has 7 variants, meaning there is 42 weapon combinations in the game, and somehow I've hit the worst one on like half of my runs. You can call it cope, but I think this game just hates me. That being said, where my luck lacks in weaponry, it more than makes up for in cards. Shortly after entering the Crusade, Clawneck gave me a couple of shield hearts, meaning that by room 6 of the Crusade, my health bar looked like this. And it didn't even stop there. I got another heart just a few rooms later. Hell, I had so much health that it was actually worth it to go the route that removes a full heart in exchange for a card. Got attack speed from that, by the way. And I can't even complain about the weapon anymore either, since on the same floor, the game just handed me a rifle. And to keep the god run going, I found a full shield heart just vibing in a bush. And for the first time ever, Clawneck offered me a prismatic card, cutting my spell cost down by 75%. But no, we aren't finished there. I shit you not, I found even more health, and a necromancy spell that allowed me to summon 5 ghosts at a time. Up to 8 times because of the spell cost cut. This had to be Massive Monster's apology for all the vampiric hammers, because just look at this health bar. This is literally 4 times my max HP. Still, I couldn't get too cocky walking in. After all, I had lost a fight to Calamar with only 5 hits less of health before. Still, it was finally time to take on Shamara. Like any good boss, Shamara came out swinging, literally shitting out bombs. There is real pain in that face. This woman is fighting demons. And just like the spiders that came before her, she flew off the screen. Only unlike her children, she didn't feel like indicating where she was landing. As she hit the ground though, a shower of spiders rained down from the cocoons on the ceiling. To get out a bit of AoE damage, I summoned wave after wave of ghosts, thinning out the adds and chipping away at Shamara's frankly massive HP pool. Shamara kept me on my toes though, constantly dashing and jumping around the arena. But hours of practice had led me to this point, and I was able to skillfully dodge past all of her attacks. I made it all the way through her first stage, taking only a single hit. But, in her desperate state, her attacks became more erratic and harder to dodge. Bullets spiraled out in slow, awkward patterns as she jumped around, leading me to take hit after hit as I dodged around the arena. Still, I had the health to tank it, and as I calmed myself down, her attacks became less and less effective. It was only a matter of time. Her fate was sealed, and with the fanning of my hammer, I brought her to her knees. Finally, I had done it. I had brought an end to the bishops of the old faith. But they were not my true enemy. No. One man stood above them all. The one who had saved me from their wrath. The one who would demand my sacrifice. The patron of the Red Crown. He who waits below. A god once chained by the very bishops I slew. I knew if I wanted to fight him, I was going to need every ounce of power I could muster. I gave my sermons to build my shield of faith, and crown new disciples to worship at my shrine, giving me a 5% damage buff to my next crusade. But that would not be enough. No, I needed one last thing. A building I'd neglected for far too long, capable of feats of strength I could never imagine. The demonic circles, capable of shifting a follower into a demon to aid me into battle. This would be my Exodia. With the loyalty I'd built up among my followers over countless crusades to the land of the old faith, I was able to churn through the divine inspirations, unlocking the max tier of the circles in record time. I called upon my most faithful followers, my disciples, to aid me in the insurmountable battle to come. 2 of them formed into ghastly beings, tethering themselves to my soul so that I may gain increased vitality, and 1, an angry ball of spikes ready to tear through my foes by my side. Finally, with my followers at my side and my disciples on my shoulders, I made my way to the circle, calling upon those who pledged themselves to me to tear open a rift to the plane of the gods themselves. A white void surrounded me as I opened my eyes, and holy shit! I'm gonna be honest, I really didn't know how overpowered the demonic circles were before this fight. But hey, 13 hours into the run, and 35 hours into the challenge, I was down for anything to give me the best chance at not restarting. 6 pedestals sat before me, 3 with weapons and 3 with spells. I walked over to see my options at Godly Dagger. Oh, and this spell gives me a 2-second burst of invincibility. Armed with one of the strongest setups I could have possibly gotten, I made my way deep into the void, approaching the chained figure of my god, the god I would soon supplant. He looked down on me with a toothy smile and congratulated me on my escapades. I, his most loyal servant, had set him free. Now, all that was left to do was to give myself over to him, so that he may take his place as the bearer of the Red Crown. His right hand was the first to approach me. He fought hard, landing an early hit and honing after me with dark chains. But he was no match for my godly dagger. I dodged and weaved around his attacks, cutting down the apparitions he summoned as we fought. And with every hit, I chunked massive pieces of his health away until he was no more. His left hand was even easier than his right. He shot bullets around in a chaotic pattern, knocking a full heart off. But as soon as he touched the ground, I cut into him, melting his health and dispatching of him in a matter of seconds. At long last, it was finally time. Time to kill God himself and take my place as a rightful divine. Like his followers, he assaulted me with chains of black and red energy and summoned misty forms of cultists I'd slain before. With every chance I got, I closed the gap and cut deep into his flesh. Every slash dealt massive damage, for what better weapon is there to kill a god than the blade of a divine? I felt the rush of adrenaline inside me as dozens of hours of practice led me to fight like a honed blade, and with ease, I slew God himself. But wait, something's not right. By the stars! Okay, let me break character here for a second, just to say this is the coolest boss arena of any game I've ever played. An infernal pit, surrounded by burning upside-down crosses, fighting around the poles of your crucified followers. It's just so perfect. Anyways, I slashed away at his eyes as they floated around the hellscape, firing wave after wave of bullets, and burrowing underground when threatened, so that he who waits himself can bombard me. I used my spell to bathe myself in invincible radiance, absorbing their blows while dealing my own. I ducked and weaved and slayed until the last of his eyes popped, leaving the god himself vulnerable. And with one final slash, I cut him down. I watched as his divine essence faded until only a scared little cat remained. It was then that I was faced with a choice as a new divine. Would I be a merciful, ambivalent force, or a vengeful being of war? Those who had come before me had chosen vengeance, and it had led them to me. I broke the cycle with mercy. Finally, I had set my followers free. Free from the fear of those who had oppressed them. Free from the fear of the old faith. Free from death itself. At long last, I could finally rest. One last time, I walked back to the portals to say my goodbyes. Yep, that's right. That was only the beginning. In fact, Cult of the Lamb's postgame makes up about 50% of its total completion. For now, though, I'm happy with my current playthrough. But if you enjoyed this series and would like to see me play through the rest of the game on the hardest difficulty, leave a like and a comment below. And while you're down there, why not consider subscribing? This was such a fun project to work on. It truly means a lot to me to see people enjoy videos like this, because whether I'm making it for one person or for 1,000, all I really care about at the end of the day is being able to entertain someone. Coming up next, I should be releasing a video on my journey to the completion of a solo run of the first mission of GTFO, a stealth shooter that is designed to be hard with a 4-man team. If that sounds interesting, ring that bell to watch for its release. Or, if you'd rather see challenges like this live, check me out over at twitch.tv/Felix_Fighter, where I stream all of these runs. And until next time, thanks